So Peter Parker has a brand new love interest never seen before in the ASM books. And I'm about to tell you why it's a terrible idea. But before we get into that, if you guys are new around the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 30,000 subscribers. Join the best Spider-Man community in the entire world. And I am on my journey to try and break through to Marvel editorial, let them know what we really think about these books. So make sure to subscribe so you can join the journey. With that being said, let's get straight into this. In issue 45 of Zeb Wells' Amazing Spider-Man, we are introduced to Shay Marken, who is a nurse working at Ravencroft, the famous rehab institute that treats supervillains. If you guys remember, Ravencroft has treated many of Spider-Man's foes, most notably Eddie Brock, after he lost the Venom symbiote for the first time, and has made many appearances in other Spider-Man media, such as Spectacular Spider-Man and even The Amazing Spider-Man 2. You're probably wondering, how does Peter even know this nurse? Well, Peter Parker, a few issues before this, would regularly visit Anna Watson, Mary Jane's aunt, who was actually being treated there after suffering effects from the Krakoan medicine. Peter and Shay would interact very briefly a few times, and it was clear that there was something there between them. Moving on to 10 issues later, however, in the wake of the Green Goblin storyline, and them two have actually been on a few dates, and they're on a date at the moment. Of course, Peter is late in classic Spider-Man fashion, but they actually seem to like each other. This is until the date is interrupted by Screwball and the Rhino, and after pleading for them to knock it off in a very comedic fashion, Peter then returns to the date with Shay, where after much back and forth, they eventually kiss, displaying the attraction they have for each other. Now at first, when the previews came out for this issue, I really wasn't a massive fan of this, and I don't think a lot of you guys were either. I've actually seen some of you guys in the Discord, which in the description if you want to join, and also some of you have DM'd me on Twitter and Discord, like some of you guys really don't like this. And to be fair, I did feel the same way. The main reason that people generally didn't like this was because it wasn't clear why this decision was made. It seemed very random and out of the blue. Not to mention, we knew nothing about this character and why Peter would take any interest in her at all. But the more that I dug into it, I sort of started to realize why Peter and Shay actually would take interest in each other, and it's actually quite a good concept. They'd actually met several times before issue 55, and Zeb Wells actually put the time into building this up in issues prior. And when I started to realize that there actually was hints of a relationship building up to this issue, I started to become more okay with it. I also want to point out that it's quite clever that they clearly share a common middle ground, which is wanting to help people. Peter is Spider-Man and Shay is a nurse. They both have occupations that require them to help people, and I think that kind of common middle ground will sort of intertwine their personalities, and I think that's quite clever. We've never seen Spider-Man have a girlfriend that's a nurse, so, you know, that's pretty cool, I guess. So the question is, was Zeb Wells actually cooking? Well, maybe, but kinda no at the same time. You see, as much as this relationship is actually okay and there's nothing wrong with the way that they're tackling these two getting together, this character in the grand scheme of things suffers from something I like to call the Carly Cooper effect. Now if you guys don't know who Carly Cooper is, essentially she was introduced by Dan Slott more about over a decade ago now. She was a part of the ASM books back when Dan Slott was writing them, and she was meant to fill the void that was left by Peter's absent relationship with Mary Jane Watson. She was a good love interest for a while, providing some really interesting stories, and while it wasn't quite the relationship Peter had with MJ, it was still pretty good. However, as the series went on, the limitations started to seep through the cracks, as Dan Slott had kind of done everything he could with this character. They started to come to a little bit of a halt, until Carly was kind of just written out of the series altogether. And by the time Dan Slott was eventually replaced by Nick Spencer, Mary Jane, the more popular option and more famous character with a lot more baggage and connection to Peter Parker, ultimately was back in the picture, rendering Carly Cooper obsolete. Peter and MJ, as we know, and as I've mentioned in countless videos before, got back together with Nick Spencer at the helm. Carly Cooper has gone on to appear several other times, which usually relates more to her occupation as a forensic police officer, rather than a direct connection or relationship to Peter Parker. And I'm afraid that the same thing might end up happening to Shay Marken. Although Shay could be a very well written girlfriend for Peter for the time being, or maybe even for the next few years of these books, the fact of the matter matter is, she will never be as popular as Mary Jane. Mary Jane has made such a statement for herself as a reoccurring character of the book that even when she's not Peter's girlfriend or wife, she's still relevant as a character pretty much moreover than any other side character that's ever appeared in these books ever. Even more than Aunt May, even more than some of Peter's greatest villains. Mary Jane seems to just always be about. And all it takes is one future writer to love the relationship that Peter and MJ have to completely undo any relationship that Peter has with Shay, or anyone else for that matter, just to get the Marvel power couple back together. Now, I know a lot of people would love this, including myself. I would love Peter and MJ to get back together, but the thing is they are building up a new relationship, which I guess the fans already know is never going to succeed. And thus, just like Carly Cooper, this is completely going to become obsolete. We don't know a lot about Shay, but from what we have seen, she is an interesting character, and to be honest, one of the best parts of Zeb Wells' run by this point, I would say. But at the same time, it almost feels disrespectful to her as a character when you realise that ultimately they will be replaced at some point in time in favour of Mary Jane again. As much as Marvel Editorial wants to make a point of MJ being separate from Spider-Man and being her own superhero, at the end of the day, Peter and MJ are going to get back together again. It's gonna happen as much as you may think it won't. The idea of Peter and MJ not being together will never leave people's minds, especially when you have writers like Jonathan Hickman executing a story which is beloved by fans all across the board of an older Peter Parker who is with Mary Jane. Ultimate Spider-Man has took the comic world by storm, and a massive part of its success is Peter and his family with MJ, and Marvel cannot ignore that. Peter and MJ are a successful comic book couple, almost rivaling Superman and Lois, so to think that that idea will ever go away is complete absurdity. At some point, MJ and Peter will be back together in the main continuity, so really, it's never going to end well for Shay and Peter. And maybe this leads us onto a wider issue at Marvel Editorial and just comics in general, but how are we meant to get invested in this relationship, even though it might be a good one, for the time being, if we just know they're going to split up at some point? Exactly, we can't. Either way, I don't mind this relationship, and I don't even mind the character, but it has major external problems. Here you can watch my review of Shadow of the Green Goblin. It is an amazing comic book. I highly recommend you go and read it, and then watch my video after. It's written by JMD Mateus. I definitely recommend you read it. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the members for supporting the channel. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, and peace.